Rasheed Wallace, I mean, that's a free space, obviously, especially Blazers. Rasheed Wallace, 41 techs in one season. I've tweeted about this on a number of occasions. People joke about that all the time, and it gets brought up. That is low-key one of the most unbreakable records in sports.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into Monkey Knife Fight's NBA show. I am not Brian Scalabrine. I'm Dan Watkins, alongside Rotowire's Nick Whalen. Nick, what's up, buddy? How you doing this week?
Doing well. The NBA is off and running. We got a lot of topics to hit. We've just been chopping up off air about rec basketball. I mean, nothing gets me fired up more than recounting the 2010 to 2014 UW-Madison rec basketball scene.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to block out the 2011 to 2015 URI intramural scene, but you guys just had to pry some really bad memories out of me. So, anyways, let's get to the NBA and talk about the pros here. About a handful of games. Every team here has played about 7-8 games so far this season. What's your biggest surprise so far this season in the NBA?
Well, I mean, the more games they play, the less surprising I feel like it becomes. But I was not all that high on Chicago. I think I kind of got sucked into the belief that a lot of these players individually make sense, but you throw them together and this could be like a disastrous defensive team. That kind of struggles to integrate Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Nick Vucevic together. And instead, they're 6-1. And, the defense has looked pretty good so far. I think the addition of Alex Caruso, I was out on that one. I thought it was a great move by the Lakers to not pay him that money. And at that contract, I think I still feel that way, but he's been really, really valuable for the Chicago Bulls. The schedule hasn't been all that tough, but still 6-1 is 6-1. And, we still don't even know if a lot of these teams that they beat so far might be a little bit better than their early season record indicates. So Chicago is certainly the team that jumps out. I think that one of the other things, on an individual basis, some of the slow starts that we're seeing, I don't know if it could be attributed to, just kind of the weird dynamic of another short off season. Some of these guys had longer breaks than others. We got a new ball in the mix. It took less than 3 weeks for players to start bringing that up as an excuse. I think the foul rules are something that have affected a lot of players, but normally you'll have one or two guys that are off to slow starts, but maybe it's just anecdotal, but it feels like there are more guys than usual who, 7-8 games into the year, it's like, how many more 0 of 9 performances are we going to see from Damian Lillard?
Right. Yep. And we'll get to Dame a little bit later on in this show. He is a part of our all-day slate tonight. But my biggest surprise so far, it's got to be Carmelo finding the fountain of youth in LA. When he goes to the Lakers, you think it's another one of these, okay, LeBron's buddy, he's a cute story, right? He's going to go play with LeBron to end his career. But as someone has put it on Twitter, Carmelo, know your role, Anthony, is a different breed this year. I mean, heading into last night, he was second in the league in bench points, 5th in three-point percentage, 8th in the league in threes made. And he had 19 three-pointers through 6 games, which is the most in Lakers history. So is it too early to give him the Jamal Crawford 6th Man of the Year award?
He's going to be in the mix, right? I mean, it's actually going to be a weirdly strong race, I think, this year. I mean, Tyler Hero obviously is going to be very much in that mix as well. I was watching that game, Miami and Dallas last night, and man, I mean, I don't think this qualifies as a surprise, but Miami looks like to borrow a term from our mutual pal, John McKechnie, they look like a veritable wagon right now. I mean, Dallas, I thought played pretty well in that game. I thought the Mavs were doing a good job of scoring and hitting a lot of tough shots on a really good Miami defense. The Heat answered, it felt like, every single time with ease. Tyler Hero's just dribbling up the court, flying him into the corner, fading away, basically releasing the ball out of bounds, just swish after swish. Kyle Lowry looks super comfortable. Bam Adebayo, kind of playing more of a true center role for them. He looks dominant. So again, I wouldn't say that's a huge surprise, but man, Miami looks really good. But to your point on Carmelo, 14 made threes over the last 3 games. I would say, he's mixed in a couple big time duds in there. I thought he was a big part of the reason they blew that lead to OKC last week, but he's already had 5 really good games for the Lakers, which is probably more than I thought he would have the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, I saw he's averaging close to 17 points a game, which is his highest in almost 6 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's he's found his role. He has found his role in LA, and I think it's just a great fit all around for them. So I thought we'd start off the show this week, kind of get the juices flowing, the mental juices flowing. Let's do a little on this day, November 3rd. So it's November 3rd, 2021. 13 years ago, 2008, the Allen Iverson trade to the Pistons. sending Chauncey Billups back to the Nuggets in return. 22 years ago on this day, the Bulls, they were over a full year since Michael Jordan retired heading into the 1999 season. They debuted a pair of rookies against the Knicks, Elton Brand and Ron Artest, who now goes by Meta World Peace. Mark Zuckerberg stealing from Ron Artest, by the way, who renamed
very sad
social media platform. And then 25 years ago, you had in 1996, the debut of Kobe Bryant. 1995, 26 years ago, you had a huge slate of debuts. Kevin Garnett, Antonio McDyess, Michael Finley, Theo Ratliff, Jerry Stackhouse, Rasheed Wallace, all making their debuts on this day in the past. So just any of those names.
I feel like Rasheed Wallace is very close to Nick's heart in a way.
You think? Yeah. I mean, I think every single one of those names means a lot to me. You're speaking my language here. Theo Ratliff? You kidding me? I mean, he's the guy, like we need to do a separate podcast about these new city jerseys at some point, by the way. But, the Hawks kind of invoking their late 90s, early 2000s look with that hawk across the jersey. Like the first guy that comes to mind for me, always Theo Ratliff, holding it down, number 42. Just a fantastic, like defense first center, like the type of guys that really just like aren't even in the league anymore. Just like such a classic early 2000s player. Rasheed Wallace, I mean, that's a free space, obviously, especially Blazers. Rasheed Wallace, 41 techs in one season. I've tweeted about this on a number of occasions. Like people joke about that all the time and it gets brought up. Like that is low key one of the most unbreakable records in sports, right? Like has anyone even come close? Has anyone even gotten to 20 techs? Like nobody is approaching that at any point.
No, unless Draymond never got close, right?
No, I think the rules now.
Dwight's always been up there.
You would be suspended, I think, before you could even get to the number.
Right, exactly. I don't even know that mathematically it'd be possible because every other one would result in a suspension. And I don't know if you'd be able to rack up enough games to even get to 41. Like the league had to institute that because of Rasheed Wallace.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love it. All right, let's get into some of the games and talk about guys that are going at it tonight. Let's start off with the Nets. They're taking on the Hawks tonight. Kevin Durant, 26.5 is his more or less on MKF tonight. KD's averaging 27.7 points per game. He hasn't scored fewer than 22 in a game yet this year, but he hasn't reached 27 points since October 24th, which was well over a week ago now against the Hornets when he dropped 38. So, Nick, what are you going tonight with KD? More or less 26.5.
Well, I'm trying to bring up the Hawks defensive stats here. I got to get away from Cheek Som's basketball reference page. He was involved in that Allen Iverson trade. So thank you for bringing that up and just completely derailing my research here. But I'm inclined to go over on this number. I mean, you mentioned KD hasn't gone over 26.5. He's been at 25, 25, 22, 23 over his last 4 games. I mean, the Nets have won 3 of those 4 comfortably. So part of it is, he played 27 minutes in that laugher against Detroit on Sunday. Obviously, if he plays his full complement of minutes, he probably gets 1 more basket and gets over this number in that one. But I think he can break out of it. The KD's kind of been coasting so far. He's been extremely good. I mean, the field goal percentage has been ridiculous so far. He's been as advertised, but the volume just hasn't been there. I think he's been comfortable deferring. I mean, 13 shots against Detroit, only 10 shots against Indiana. I think the Nets probably prefer, especially without Kyrie Irving, to have him in the 18, 19, 20, maybe even more field goal attempt range on most nights. So I don't think KD can make it 5 games in a row, under 26.5. So I'm inclined to go over here against an Atlanta team that just when you're ready to say, like, this might be the 3rd or 4th best team in the East, has had some kind of letdown performances. So I'm interested to see where you come in on this as well, Dan, but I'll take the over on Durant.
Yeah, I'm going to go more as well. And it has bumped up here as we're doing this show to 27.5, but I like KD to get to 30 tonight. I think he's just been too quiet for too long here. So I think we're just in store for one of those games from Durant. On the other side, you got Trae Young, 25.5. His numbers bumped up a little bit since we started shooting this show. He's probable tonight with a sore knee. Nick, I saw you guys writing on Rotowire that you're a little concerned about heading into a back-to-back here with the Hawks, but Young is averaging 23 points per game. Monday night, he had 26 against the Wizards, but the 2 games before that, just a combined 28 points in those contests. So how do you feel about a banged-up Trae Young tonight?
This one's a little tougher for me because of that knee issue. And I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, chances are he does play, but with it being the back-to-back, we've seen a lot of teams be really careful, especially teams that played deep into last season, be really careful with guys who could probably play through some of these injuries early on. But I think he does play. I think he wants the challenge of playing against Brooklyn. I mean, Trae Young's been tough to figure out because, you look at that last game against Washington, 26 points in 36 minutes, took 16 shots, made all 11 of his free throw attempts, but he's not really getting the line all that much at all this year. I think he's kind of one of the poster boys for guys who've been affected by the reduction in foul calls and trying to bait refs. And it seems like he's kind of adjusted at least a little bit better than a guy like James Harden, who's still just like doing the same thing and expecting different results. But for Trae Young, I think it's going to be a learning process to, get back to the point where he's averaging 7, 8, 9 free throw attempts per game. So, I don't think that latest performance against Washington on Monday is necessarily emblematic of what you're going to get, at least right now, night to night. So, I mean, against the Brooklyn defense that has not been great, but has been competent enough. And neither of these teams play all that quickly. Brooklyn's right around 100 in terms of possessions per 100 for pace. Hawks are bottom 5 in the league right now in pace, which is kind of surprising. I think this ends up being a bit of a lower scoring game and one where Trae Young acts a little bit more as a facilitator.
Yeah, I kind of like the low here too. I'm just wondering if they're gonna, maybe if he's on a little bit of a minutes restriction tonight going into that back-to-back. So I'm just gonna play it safe and go with less than 25.5 for Young. And I'm glad you brought up that new rule. How do you feel about that as a fan, just watching this as a visual aspect, watching the NBA games this year with them taking that, kind of calling less on that, kind of throwing your body in and throwing your arms up, trying to get a shot off there?
I mean, it's provided us with some incredible comedy so far, first and foremost. I think guys like Wob have done a great job of documenting every time James Harden, just kind of drives into a defender and just kind of drops the ball in midair and flails his arms. And it's kind of jarring because you're so used to those being called every single time over the last, 4 or 5 years, especially. But I think it's great. I haven't really seen anyone be critical of the rule change other than players, right? And I think you see guys like Harden, guys like Trae Young. I forget who it was, excuse me, who was, referencing the other night, like, oh man, everybody, Devin Booker's under 20 points a game, Dame's under 20 points a game. I'll have to look it up as we talk. But I think players who are scorers and who are affected by it, I think they don't like it, but every other player seems to be like, this is fantastic. I think things went a little bit too far in favor of the offense around the mid to late, 2010s. And obviously we don't want to send it all the way back to 2004, where the Pistons are holding the Charlotte Hornets to like 48 points per game. But I think the league kind of wants a little bit more of a balance. And thus far, I don't necessarily enjoy when every team is taking 55 threes and games are like 134 to 131. I don't mind mixing in like a 98 to 91 game every now and then. Right.
Absolutely. And I like, and Harden definitely is one of the big, as you mentioned, the poster boys of this whole new rule. Up until this point, going into this season, he was getting to the line something like at least 10 times a game, if not more than that, a night there for his career. And this year, he's only getting to the line about 5 times a game, which is just a huge drop off.
Right. He had, I think, what did he have? 19 free throw attempts in that game over the weekend against Indiana. He has 18 combined free throw attempts in his other 6 games. Like he had more free throw attempts in one game than the rest of the games on the season. So, and a lot of guys have had that. It's the same thing with Trae Young, having those 11 attempts in their last game. I think he had like 11 total attempts over their previous 4 or 5 games. So we're still seeing it on certain nights where these guys can get those calls. But on the whole, it's really slowed down, which I think it's been fantastic from a watchability standpoint, right? Where if you're watching an NFL game, you don't want to see a defensive holding or a holding on the offense on every other play, even though you could call those. It just makes for a better viewing experience when the game is not just constantly being stopped, especially a game like the NBA where you're not stopping and huddling up for specific plays. You want to see back and forth. And when the game is being stopped every 45 seconds for a set of free throws that sometimes take 2 or 3 minutes total by the time everybody's lined up, it just makes for a much better viewing experience.
Oh, absolutely. And let's circle back to James Harden here. We do have a prop up for Monkey Knife Fight tonight in this game. 9.5 assists for Harden. He's averaging just over 8 assists per game. He's third in the NBA behind CP3, and I think Trae Young as well are the 2 guys ahead of him. On Sunday, he had a season high of 12 assists against the Pistons. That's the only time he's had more than 9 assists in the game this year. So can he do that again tonight?
I think he certainly can. With Harden, he's kind of one of the few guys you have to ask, like, does he want to do it? Is he going to put in the effort required to do this? But I think he can. I mean, you look at the Atlanta Hawks right now, one of the deepest teams in the league by far. One, I think they might be a little too deep. And two, like for having a semi-elite big man and kind of an elite fantasy big man in Clint Capella, who rebounds well and racks up blocks and ostensibly, is a really good rim protector. Atlanta's dead last right now in field goal percentage allowed at the rim. Opponents are shooting 75% from 0 to 3 feet, according to Basketball Reference. I mean, if you look at the best team in the league, which right now is Detroit, so that tells you something. They're at 60%. So that's a pretty big difference. I mean, it's a stat that is highly variable and will likely, in Atlanta's case, kind of progress towards the mean as the season goes on. But right now, like they're having a tough time stopping guys at the rim. And you look at where a lot of James Harden's assists come from. Like, sure, he can sling it to Joe Harris or Kevin Durant for a 3 on the wing, but a lot of what he does is work with their big men, get guys on his back. He still kind of does the Stanley from The Office dribble, where he's kind of like down low to the ground, pinning guys on his butt, and then is able to accelerate and throw that lob up to guys like Nick Claxton or Blake Griffin. I think Atlanta's going to have trouble defending that, and I do like Harden to go more here.
Yeah, I want to stack that together with the KD. If I'm going more on KD, and I think he's going to get over 30 tonight, someone's got to pass on the ball. So why not James Harden? So I'm going more there as well. Let's move on here. We got another good game. This is the late one. It's, I think, a 10 o'clock Eastern time tip. Charlotte, Golden State. Steph Curry, 32.5 is his more or less. He's averaging about 29 a game, but that number's been pulled up this year by 2 big games. He had 36 against Memphis last week, and he had 45 earlier against the Clippers. Other than that, he's been in the low to mid 20s in the other 4 games the Warriors have played this year. And another note here as well, Golden State's been off since Saturday, so they are well rested going into this one. So do you like Steph to go more than 32.5?
I think this is a great spot for it. Yeah, I think both these teams, are fast paced. They're both top 10 in that metric. For as fun as Charlotte has been, I mean, they're a top 3 offense in the league. They're also a bottom 3 defense. They're 28th right now in defensive rating, ahead of only the Orlando Magic, who are not a good basketball team, and the Memphis Grizzlies, who in a lot of ways have been kind of the same team as Charlotte, where it's a lot of running gun. You love what you're seeing on offense, but you're winning games like I said before, like 134 to 131, not necessarily what you want. So I think as long as Steph doesn't have one of those weird games where he's like 1 of 7 from 3 at the end of the first quarter, I think he's going to have a really good chance here, because for as fun and dynamic and kind of up and coming as the Charlotte team looks like it is, it still is not very good on defense right now. Someone like LaMelo Ball might be spending time, switched out onto Steph Curry in this game. I think that's a matchup that Steph will certainly welcome. So I think he has a good chance here to have a big game against LaMelo and Charlotte. I will go more on that number for Steph Curry.
Yeah, I'll go more as well. I like that extra bit of rest they've had for 3 nights here. So I think Golden State's going to put up some good numbers tonight. And let's talk about LaMelo. His more or less is 19.5. He's averaging 20 points a game, so just barely getting over that. Past 2 games, 30 points and 27 points. The 2 games before that, just 6 and 7, so 13 points total. Which LaMelo Ball do we get tonight? Do we get the scorer, or do we get more of the facilitator?
Yeah, it's been feast or famine with him so far, right? I mean, he's got 4 games of 25 or more, and 4 games of 19 or less. So it seems like he's either going to blow through this or going to go way under. I mean, he had 6 points against Miami, which is understandable. That's a great defense and kind of the team that is perfectly constructed to shut down a player like LaMelo. But then he also had 7 points against Orlando late last week as well, which, like I mentioned, the worst defense in the NBA. So it's a little bit concerning that you can have a game like that against a defense that's been so friendly to virtually every other opponent. It's hard to speak really confidently about this. But at the same time, I do think Golden State, is certainly not a finished product on the defensive end. They've been good in that area so far. They're one of 3 teams that's under 100 points per 100 in terms of defensive rating. So the defense has been good so far, but they've also had some fluky luck, in terms of teams not making open threes, things like that. I'm inclined to think that LaMelo is going to want to bring it against Steph Curry, right? I mean, I'm not a huge narrative guy typically, but I feel like if there's the type of opponent that LaMelo Ball wants to make a statement against, it's probably someone like Steph, who he's clearly molded his game after to some regard. So I don't feel great about it, but I'm going to have to go more on LaMelo.
Yeah, I think just because of the game pace and how this one's going to flow and go back and forth, they're going to be running all over the gym. So I like LaMelo to get just barely over, but I think he's going to get over here. and go more. We got one more prop in this game, and let's talk about one of the Plumlees. Mason Plumlee, 8.5 rebounds. He's averaging 8.6 boards a game. Charlotte's played 8 games this year. 4 of those games, Plumlee's had double-digit rebounds. The other 4, he's had 7 or less. So kind of feast or famine, as you mentioned with LaMelo Ball. Same thing with Mason Plumlee here on the glass, including each of those last 3 games. He's been less than 7. So can he get back to 9 tonight? I want to say yes if we're going with more and everything else, just the way this game's going to flow. How do you feel?
Man, I knew we would have a Plumlee prop at some point. I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one and go under. Golden State actually has the highest defensive rebounding rate in the league right now. They're rebounding like 84.2%. That's really, really high. Only a handful of teams are even at 80%. So the opportunities might be limited for Plumlee, who's done actually a ton of his work on the offensive glass. I mean, he's had more or as many or more offensive rebounds than defensive rebounds in each of his last 4 games. So he's getting a lot of those on, tips and just kind of out hustling teams. But Golden State has not allowed much of that at all this season. So I think this is actually kind of a tough spot for him to go more on that number.
All right. And the other reason I bring up Mason Plumlee is because our wonderful executive producer, Jason Rubin, has a game he wants to play with us. So Jay, I'm going to toss the mic to you here because I know you want to play. Has that team had a Plumlee?
Yeah, this is a very important. It's a very important game. There's some stats that need to be relayed about the Plumlee family. 11 of 30 teams have featured one of the Plumlee brothers, Miles, Mason, or Marshall. The long forgotten Marshall. But I will not say what team he played on or what foreign teams he's played on. The Plumlees are also a global franchise. Many of them have played in Australia, Europe, Eurobasket, Spain, but also 11 of 30 teams. So it's a 36% chance that the team's featured. A team has featured a Plumlee, and I'm just kind of pulling up right now our trusty display capture, which will be in 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so here it is. If you guys can see it on your screen now. It's not Denver. I'm going to recycle this so we could start beginning. You guys are going to have a chance to win MKF dollars, by the way. If you could pick which team had if you could pick correctly that yes or no they had a Plumlee, you'll get MKF dollars. If you can tell me which Plumlee, even more MKF dollars. Are you guys ready to play Have They Had a Plumlee?
Absolutely.
I've been preparing my whole life for this. Let's go.
Okay. All right. We start with the Philadelphia 76ers. Have they had a Plumlee?
I'm going to say no.
That is correct. 2 MKF dollars each. We continue. The Memphis Grizzlies. Have they had a Plumlee?
No.
Yes.
Correct on Nick's part, not on Dan's. I think Nick might actually know every single team that's had a Plumlee.
It's kind of been my job to keep track of the Plumlees these last few years.
Have the Denver Nuggets had a Plumlee?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Also correct. Can you name which Plumlee?
Mason.
Yes, it was Mason Plumlee.
Are we going to do this with the Zellers, too?
We can do that next week.
I would love to.
All right, we'll roll one more with Have They Had a Plumlee. It is the Los Angeles Lakers. Have they had a Plumlee?
No.
I don't think so. If they did, it would be Miles for some reason, but I'm going to say no.
They have not had a Plumlee. Here are the teams that have had a Plumlee. I guess the random generator there did not do us well. But Mason Plumlee has played for the Nets, the Blazers, the Nuggets, the Pistons, and the Hornets. Mm-hmm. Miles Plumlee has played for the Pacers, the Suns, the Bucks, also the Hornets, and the Hawks. And Marshall Plumlee has played for the Knicks and the Bucks. So a couple of Plumlee crossovers there, if you will.
I definitely would not have gotten Miles Plumlee playing for the Hawks. I have no memory of that happening.
Basketball Reference has never lied to me, and therefore I had to go with theirs. Also, Marshall Plumlee has played for Perth in Australia. Mason or Miles has played for like Real Madrid. Just some amazing Plumlee facts, guys.
Yeah,
they're a worldwide brand. They don't discriminate.
They're a basketball dynasty in the making. Mm-hmm. So let's bring this back here. Let's talk about our all-day slate. We got four big names here tonight for you guys to play. Let's start off with Damian Lillard, 25.5 against Cleveland tonight. Dame is struggling to start this season. It's no secret. Through 7 games, he's averaging career lows in points with just 18.6. Shooting percentage, he's not even making 35% of his shots, and he's been brutal from downtown this year, shooting just 23%. After Monday night's game, Dame saying, quote, "I always look at struggles as an opportunity to show my true character." And he had 25 points is just his season high as well. So can he have his season high tonight, Nick?
I mean, at some point he's going to break out of it, right? But he's really only had one good game so far, and that was against the Clippers in a blowout when he had 25, 6 and 4, went 5 of 7 from 3. I mean, he has 0 of 9, 0 of 8, 2 of 14, and 2 of 9 games from 3 already this season. And you know, he was struggling those first 3 or 4 games of the year. And on the Rotowire NBA podcast, which is really an all-time great podcast, just kind of speaking impartially. We look back last season and he had, you know, several 3 or 4 game stretches where he would struggle. And, you know, the case we were making basically is if this happened in the middle of March instead of the first 4 games of the year, you wouldn't really bat an eyelash. But I mean, now that we are going to be coming up on 8 games into the year, if he has another like 1 of 8 performance here, it means something. I don't know. I mean, it's 10% of the season that you've really struggled through. So, you know, I mean, again, he's going to break out of it at some point, but I don't think I could confidently say like tonight's the night. You know, it hasn't, like, matchups haven't really mattered. It's just about like, is he knocking down the threes that we've seen him knock down for the last decade? And so far the answer's been no. So until he shows it, I'm going to have to go less. I mean, I'll live with getting burned on that one if this is a night that Dame finally breaks out.
I'm going to go with the more, just because I like the way he's talking after the game. You know, he's taking the proper accountability and putting it on himself. And I just like the way Chauncey Billups is. I think Chauncey's going to get in his ear too. And that's something good. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that Monday night too, when the Sixers fans all chanting, "We want Dame," and Billups was mouthing, "So do we." they cut to him on the side. It was pretty good. Next up, we got Bradley Beal, 27.5 against the Raptors. Beal's averaging 24.3 points per game this season. He's only reached 28 one time so far, and that was Saturday night against the pitiful Boston Celtics, who we'll get to in just a second, when he dropped 36 in Boston against his buddy Jason Tatum. So how do you like Bradley Beal tonight against Toronto? I'm going to go less.
Yeah, I think I will too. I mean, in that 36-point game, we should note, came in 46 minutes. You know, overtime was a factor there. I don't know if Beal is one of the handful of players who is affected by the new basketball. He's kind of had some weird shooting nights as well. You know, 1 of 6, 3 of 13, 0 of 6, 1 of 4, 3 of 8, 3 of 11 over his last 2 games. So, I mean, the percentage hasn't been anywhere close. He's at 23% from 3 and 38% from the field overall. Percentages have been way down compared to last year. I obviously like Devin Booker, like Damian Lillard, like Michael Porter. Like, these guys are going to pick it up eventually, but you know, if you're just looking at one game, it's really hard to say this is the night. So I kind of feel the same way about this one as I do with Damian Lillard. I'm going to kind of play it safe, or what I think is a safe play here, and go less. Yep.
And then let's talk about his buddy Jason Tatum, 25.5 against the Magic tonight. That's his more or less number. He's averaging 25.7 points per game. He finished with 20 points in Monday's historic fourth quarter collapse against the Bulls. The Celtics, so I heard this stat, the Celtics were the first team in the shot clock era, so since like 1955, to enter the fourth quarter leading by 14 and lose the game in regulation by 14 or more points. And Jason Tatum, a big reason for that, missing a bunch of shots down the stretch. Things just not coming easy for him or Jaylen Brown right now. So can Tatum have a big night tonight? I'm saying no, because I think this team's just an absolute dumpster fire at the moment.
Yeah, it's been pretty weird, I'll tell you that. And this was an unbelievable stat. One of my buddies at work mentioned this the other day, and I'm verifying it as we speak. I don't know how this is possible. Boston did not have a single defensive rebound in that entire fourth quarter.
It's not surprising. They don't play together well at all.
No, they don't. And honestly, I don't know that they have for a while, but they've kind of been able to get away with it because they're so talented. You know, we're finally starting to see it, and it took all of 7 games for Marcus Smart to speak up on this, but it's been a very my turn, your turn offense between Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I think the better that Jaylen Brown gets, there's almost more tension, even though it feels like they should improve, literally together. It's like the more that Jaylen Brown improves and Jason Tatum has kind of stayed the same, which is still really good. Like, he's still a top 10 to 15 player in the league. But the more that Brown approaches Tatum's level, the more that they've kind of seemed to clash and the less that they've kind of played together. And I'm not sure what the fix is on the fly, because you don't have a ton of great shooting around these guys. You have a nice roster on paper that looks pretty deep, but also has a lot of unproven players. Like, you're relying on, a guy in Peyton Pritchard, who is just kind of like a bonus player last year. A lot of their like mid first round picks from these last few drafts have just been like, okay, I'm talking Romeo Langford, Aaron Nesmith, Grant Williams, guys like that are like, ideal like 8th or 9th guys, not like 6th or 7th guys. Josh Richardson has been a disaster for them so far. Nobody saw that coming. So I don't know what the fix is for Boston. With that said, I feel like this is almost going to continue to be a good situation for fantasy and like MKF contest purposes, because I don't really see Brown and Tatum especially, changing what they're doing. I don't know what the other option is. I think Tatum's just going to kind of continue to shoot through it, and he's going to have 8 of 22, 7 of 30 nights here and there, but he's also going to have 14 of 28 nights like he had against Charlotte earlier last week. So I'm still in on Jason Tatum, and I think he can have a big game here. Orlando's a terrible defense. I think Boston, this is kind of a get right game if things go well, at least for them. So I'll go more on Tatum.
That's a big if things go right for the Celtics.
Yeah, right.
It's just terrible right now. Marcus Smart, just mouthing off after the game. Jason, it says a lot that Tatum or Brown didn't speak to the media at all. Jaylen Brown was supposed to speak after that game, and he decided not to. After Marcus Smart went on his little rant about how Tatum and Brown don't pass the ball, which is basically code for give me the ball, I want to shoot more so I can miss more shots, because that's just what Marcus Smart does.
I say noted knockdown shooter, Marcus Smart.
Yeah. He's a shooting guard that can't shoot, as one of my bosses tells me almost every single day when I see him. So,
so hold on. You have, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't really care how the Celtics do, but you guys do. Like, where are you at on Marcus Smart, who is like the archetype for like
I've wanted him gone for 3 years.
You want him gone? Really? Okay.
No, I want him gone. Yeah. I think they need a true point guard, one to help that can get the ball to Brown and Tatum. And 2, they need a big guy as well. I think they need someone that's like another 6'9", 6'10" guy, besides Robert Williams, who's a nice little piece. If he's your fifth starter, your 5 and your 5th starter that gets the ball, the 5th most amount of times there, he's fine. But with what he is right now, it's a disaster.
It's kind of tough because you guys who are making the decisions for the Celtics, like you hit the jackpot.
I am part of the Celtics brass. I am not Brian Scalabrine, by the way, as I mentioned at the start of the show.
You guys hit the jackpot on 2 like fairly big swing controversial picks. Like, I don't think anybody thought Jaylen Brown would be this good, and there were certainly people who thought Tatum would be this good. But it was a pretty big swing to trade out of that Fultz pick, essentially, and and bring on Jason Tatum. Both those guys have been like A+ draft picks. The problem is when you swing and miss on Gordon Hayward, which wasn't necessarily Boston's fault. I think everybody loved that move at the time. But then you swing and miss on Kemba Walker as well. Like,
and the Kyrie disaster.
And Kyrie, I totally forgot about Kyrie. Like, you hit on these 2 all-time draft picks who, you had on the cheap for 4 years, like everything's perfect. But when you go over 3 on those free agency signings, man, it's brutal.
No, if you go back 8 years ago now to that the Paul Pierce Garnett trade, what they did to the Nets, they absolutely fleeced them, and the Nets are a better team right now. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Putting Nick on the spot. We have 4 picks left, 20 seconds on total, and Paul George, Embiid, Jokic, and Towns. They all have like the same number: 20.5, 26.5, 25.5, and 25.5. More or less, Nick. Paul George, Embiid.
Definitely more on Paul George. He's been as good as expected. The usage rate has been there. He got off to a terrible start against OKC the other night. I don't even think he scored in the first quarter. Still had 32 in that one. He's been fantastic. Embiid's worrying me. He's already getting MRIs. I know he's not on the injury report tonight. Did rest in their last game, but he's been very feast or famine as well. Like a lot of these stars, it's either like he has 3 20-point games, 3 games under 20 points. I'm worried about his condition right now. I'm going to go under on Embiid.
Nice. Jokic and Towns, 25.5, 5 seconds each. Go.
Jokic over, Towns under. Anthony Edwards stealing too many shots from Towns.
Love it. All right, Nick. I think that's going to do it for us this week. Where can they follow you?
All right, here we go. You can follow me at my last name, but the L is a 1. So that's at WHA1EN.
Love it. And you can follow me at Dan Watkins Radio. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and good luck in the NBA contest tonight.